I'm going to do a second video on this. I've got a bunch of pictures. As I said, I enjoy visiting historical places, and this is I'm just going to flash up some pictures on here, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. But overall, this is just going to be story time, just about things that have happened. So this picture right here, that little gated walkway is you can walk towards it's locked, I believe. Yeah. So that is the walkway that would go into the cemetery that is fourth President James Madison's cemetery. He's buried there. Dolly Madison's buried there, obviously. And the burial ground is a mess. Bodies buried all over the place. Just generations. And some people, the house was used during the Civil War as well. And so they were just burying some bodies there. It was taken over by a couple. This is in, so the home is in Montpelier. Well, I'm sorry, Montpelier, and it's in Orange County, Virginia. But there are bodies all over, and they went through and did scans and X-rays. But this picture, what I like about it is that this tree is over 200 plus years old, and that tree was planted by hand by James Madison's friend, General Marquis de Lafayette, 18-year-old Frenchman who came over and became good friends with George Washington and helped us win the war. So I'm a fan of Marquis. I have a book about him, but I haven't read it yet. I just think that, the sacrifices that he made is awesome. And just to be so young. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but the Marquis, when he died, he's buried in France, obviously. Paris, I believe. And I want to say Andrew Jackson was president. Now, I'm sure I'm going to be getting the story incorrect, but he had died, and he wanted to be buried in Paris, and so they dug a hole and they lowered his coffin in. But the soil that they filled back in was American soil. Now, I've heard it was soil that was taken from Virginia. I've heard it was taken from around Mount Vernon, which is George Washington's home, because he loved Washington. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I believe that my understanding was Andrew Jackson sent a boatload of soil over. And so Marquis de Lafayette is buried in Paris, and he's covered with American soil. That was my elbow that just popped. Ow. And he said he wanted to be buried between his two loves. And I always thought that was a pretty cool thing. I'm not big on foreign travel, but I would definitely love to go to his grave. But there's so many more things I want to see here. Side note. So this is another did you know? So there is a statue of George Washington in England. And I know what you're thinking, like, why? Why would they have it there? Well, England's king and queen and parliament just decided to make statues of world leaders. And what's funny about that is George Washington was voted England's greatest foe of all time. And that was because, even against Hitler, and the reason why he got that was because he, unlike Hitler, was at the battlefield. He was present. And so since he was there, it showed his guts. And so he gets that that kind of vote of confidence, I guess, from them, and they think it was just a cool thing. But anyways, Washington came from England, his family, and you can go over there now, and they have a thing called Sulgrave Manor, and you can tour it, and it's got the Washington crest on it and everything like that. And it's funny because England owns the home still in the territory, and they welcome you. Come tour. Look, this is the George Washington, the general, and the first president, and everything like that. This is where his family came from, and I think it's kind of a way to say that we're not so distant. Like we may be two different countries, but we're still kind of one people. Just split journeys, but we came from the same. And so I think they kind of hold on to that, like kind of making him their own. But anyways, there's a statue there, not at Sulgrave, I think it's in London. And if you know anything about Washington, he loved the British, and he wanted to be a member of the British Army. He wanted to be British high society, and they frowned upon him in the French and Indian War, 7 Years' War, however you want to refer to it, which by all accounts is, as Winston Churchill said, it was the first great world war, because there's so many countries involved. I read a book on it. Oh my gosh, I started losing as to who was who, because Prussia and Russia and Germany, and not Germany, I think it was Prussia. Anyways, I don't even remember all the countries that were involved, and just all the wars that went on. It was crazy. I just wanted him to get back to America, because that was what I was interested in. I didn't care so much it was a global thing, because I'm ignorant, and I just wanted to focus on this. I wanted to focus on that because I'm a George Washington fanatic. I've read like 9 books on him. I've been to the house 3 times. I have another 10 books on my shelf about him. I don't know what it is. He sparked an interest, and I don't know. I just have an appreciation for what he did in terms of winning our independence, becoming the president, building the office, and laying down a lot of things that we do today, and knowing that he wasn't the smartest person in the room, and giving up the power, which he if you know anything about Washington, he was a big fan of Cincinnatus, who was the I think he was Rome. He was Rome. He was a Roman general who gave up power. I think it was like 2,000 years before. Gave up power after he won independence, or won a war, and then they called him back 30 years later, and he led Rome to another war, to which they won, and he immediately gave up power. He just wanted to be a farmer. And if Washington had that personality, where I think he wanted people to see that I don't want to do this. And I don't think he really did, but I think there's something humbling, and you can romanticize that, giving up the power. Because look at Napoleon. Napoleon's number one thing was, they wanted me to be another Washington, and that's not what he wanted. And I think that there's something that's very American, because before Washington had done that, I think it was over 2,000 years before a military general who had won wars for his country and won their independence, he did not become a dictator, and he turned the power to the people. It just didn't happen. And so we are extremely lucky for how we turned out, because we could so easily be a military dictatorship if that was what he wanted. And we could be a third world country, fighting over, having coups over running the country. We could just be nothing. But we had strong leadership, not just him. There were a lot of others. Thomas Jefferson as well. Kind of annoys me, but that's a side thing. James Madison annoyed me a little bit too because he turns back on Washington. It's funny because Washington died. Madison turned his back on him, became real good friends with Jefferson, and was just like Jefferson's hype boy. Like, yeah, we're going to do this. Me and Jeffy are going to do this. And then when Madison, Jefferson's president, Madison, he's doing everything he can for Jefferson. Jefferson's like, it's the start of the year. I'm going to go home for 9 months. I'll be back. And it was funny because Madison was the guy. And then Madison gets into office, and first thing he does is he needs Jefferson's help. And Jefferson's like, you're going to have to find someone else. I've retired. And just, kind of like he should have just wrote back a picture with the middle finger. It came across the exact same way. And I think Madison realized, oh, wow, I was used. And after Jefferson's death, near the end of Jefferson's life, and Madison died, I think 5 years later, he really went about trying to set things right, that Washington was right. And, I think he was blinded by someone who he realized used him and wasn't his friend as much as he thought. And I'm sure we can all relate. We all have that person. But anyways, I didn't mean for this to get... I just wanted to tell you about the tree. I didn't mean to get sidetracked with any of the other stuff. Let's go to another picture so that I'm... Hold on. Scan through here. Okay. This one right here. So if you were walking out of... Maybe this isn't a story time. Maybe this is just show and tell. Hold on. I apologize. Okay. So if you're standing on the porch of James Madison's Montpelier, that's what you see. And I believe that is the Blue Ridge Mountain. But that's a beautiful view. I won't hold on this picture too long, but just an idea. And then, we'll go here. This is Madison's grave. Let me get rid of that. So this is Madison's grave. Big old James Madison's grave, right? And then the grave right behind is Dolly Madison. I'm not saying she deserves something big and huge, but I will say that after James Madison's death, he freed his slave, Paul Jennings. There is a book Paul Jennings actually wrote, a colored man's reminiscence of James Madison. But anyways, it's I think it's called A Slave in the White House. It was redone and added on to. It tells about Paul Jennings. He is a remarkable man. He was given his freedom when Madison died, and he was young. I want to say 30s. He had went with Madison to the White House. Some accounts, he was the one who helped Dolly Madison get down the Washington painting during the War of 1812 before the British came and set the place on fire. Other accounts, he was with Madison the whole time. I want to say he was there, but I believe he was with Madison. But he went off after his freedom, and he had learned so much. Madison was a very smart man, and he learned so much, and he learned how to make money and got into real estate, and he owns properties in Alexandria, Virginia, Washington, D.C. that his family, his descendants, still own today. And they live on some of the property. he became a self-made millionaire for the time. So much so that Dolly Madison moved to Washington, ran up so much debt, and she didn't know what to do. And she had to, look, he was a slave. Dolly Madison was the wife of the man who freed him, but he was still a slave. He bought her debt, which I believe was like $250,000 current money. Bought her debt. Told her to go live her life again. She racked up another debt later on, I think about $150,000 to $200,000. He paid it. Never asked for anything more. A slave is paying the former mistress's, the wife, the debt. I guess she wasn't the mistress, she was the wife. But, I mean, just think about that. And the man went on to build ships and sailed them down the coast to the South during the Civil War to free slaves. I think that he's somebody that he should be talked about in history books, shared. He lived a ripe old age. I don't remember how old he was now when he died. But yeah, he's a, see if I can, sorry. Born 1799 in Orange County, Virginia. He was a slave. Now, if I remember correctly, I don't think he knew his dad, and he only knew his mom. He never, ever found out her name. And he died in 1874. Paul Jennings, slave. I don't know how good it's going to... Sorry. But anyways, that's the picture of him. It's not a very good one. You can look it up if you want to. But yeah, he was a pretty miraculous person. Let's go on to another picture. I guess this is just going to be show and tell. I apologize. I will tell a couple stories that were entertaining. So this is when you're pulling up, this is Montpelier. They were built, if you look off to the right, they were building those. They were new slave quarters. Well, not, they were replica slave quarters. They're not still, owning people there. But they were replica slave quarters to show you how close the slaves were to the home. Now, when you look at the home, you see that little half moon glass at the top. That was the window that Madison looked out of as he wrote the Bill of Rights. Pretty much the federal papers, like everything he was involved in, he was writing through there. Now, on the right-hand side, the balcony, that would have been Dolly Madison's side where she could walk out. On the left was James Madison. He never went out there. In those days, they had two different bedrooms. He ended up, if you're going through the front door, his quarters ended up being downstairs to the left. Now, you can't see it, and I do apologize. I wasn't thinking about it when I took the picture. But if you look to the road, how it curves to the right, this first tree here, off to the right of that tree, you can faintly make it out, but that is the, I don't remember what it was called. I'm butchering the name. It was, they were working on it, so I couldn't go there, and no picture would really look good. But that was kind of where they went out, and they would sit, and they would talk, and they would pray, and they would do all this and that. He owned a lot of acres. The DuPonts actually ended up taking it over, and the woman, I can't think of her name, but there are pictures in there. She built it up, made it bigger. This this woman is miraculous. So when she was making the house, she painted, I mean, the outside was done to look like a pink house. I mean, she went all out. But every step along the way, she made sure not to tarnish the brick. There were some walkways that had arches, and she wanted to remove them and just have regular square doors. So they would cut along the wall and remove that arch, and she saved it and had them put it all in the attic, because she said, one day this house won't be mine, and it'll be maybe possibly given back to Virginia or whatever. And she wanted all the original material so it could be put back up. She was thinking about it, and I think that's very cool to have saved so much of it. But yeah, that's the front of that. Anybody know what this is? Right here. That is the boyhood home of President Ronald Reagan. Now, if you noticed at the bottom, it says boyhood home of President Ronald Reagan off to the bottom left. I'm going to pretend like you're all illiterate, so you didn't see it. But this is where he famously tells the story of coming home and finding his dad just drunk, just laying right here, passed out drunk. And his mom gave him a book to read. And I apologize, I don't remember the name of the book, but it talks about Ronald Reagan boyhood book about dad drinking. They sell the book there, actually, at Reagan's thing. But yeah, he read this book, and it just told him that sorry, I'm trying to find it now. I got one of those minds that sometimes I gotta find it. Anyways, basically the book, I mean, this is, he was born in, when was old Ronnie born? Ronald Reagan birth.
He was born on February 6th, 1911.
In Tampico, Illinois. Yep, okay. So imagine you're born in 1911. You probably find your dad drunk on the porch 1919, and your mother gives you a book, and this book was written, and it talks about alcoholism being a disease. And after he read that book, he never looked at his dad as a bad person or something like that. He would help his dad up, and he said, one day he'll beat it. I mean, to be that young, you are, probably laughed at by other people, and you just, but what's cool about this house is that when you walk inside, hey, I'm doing a video, shut your faces. When you walk inside, every single thing in that house is authentic. Not to the time necessarily. It's authentic because when the house was taken over, I believe Reagan was president. And he actually visited the house one time when he was president. But anyways, Reagan, Ron, and his brother, was his brother named Fred? They were given a Sears catalog because that was what you got your home stuff from back in the day. They were given a Sears catalog and blueprints of every room. And they were told, find items in the Sears catalog that were in your room and tell us where it was, and we'll order it and we'll set it exactly where you had it. So the two brothers both drew up their things, swapped. agreed, yep, that's where things were. And then these people ordered it and put it all in place. And Reagan showed up, and there's only one thing that's wrong, and that is one of the bathroom doors can't open all the way. So they had to skim it down a little bit, but it can't open all the way because there's a sink that's too close. But this had been changed into an apartment, so they had done some changes, but they did their best to move it all back around. So that was pretty cool. I was on this tour when I I got there on a Saturday morning, and it was like a hour and 20-minute drive, and it's a really cool little town. They have like an arch when you drive through that says Dixon, Illinois. Sorry, I was on a different city, but so you go. I went there, and the guy said, "Yeah, we don't do tours on Saturday," and I was like, "Oh, man, that sucks." And he goes, "Where'd you come from?" And I was like, well, I told him. And he goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Where at?" And so I told him, gave my address. And he said, "Just last year, I buried his grandmother in that cemetery in the town." And I said, "Well, which one?" And he goes, "By God, you do live there." And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'll tell you what, let me make a phone call." I was like, "Okay." So as he's making the phone call, he goes, "So you'd like to do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I visited my sister's house. She's just north of Richmond, Virginia." And so I went and did all these other places. And he goes, "My family that lived in that town, they moved to Richmond, Virginia." And I was like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, "I got you." So he calls up the guy. He goes, "I got someone here." And he explained everything. And the guy goes, "I'll be right over." And the guy showed up. And the tour was like $5. I just threw in a 10. I was like, "Here you go, just keep it." And they're like, "Oh, appreciate it." So he gave me the tour. And it was funny because the tour was about, the normal tour there is about a half hour. Tour for me was like an hour and 10 minutes because I was the only one in there. We get down, and there's a room in there where you can watch some stuff. We get down there, and two people show up. The guy looks at the guy who gave me the tour, looks at the other guy, and he goes, "I'm done for the day." And he shakes my hand, he walks out the door, and the guy goes, "Oh, we're not doing tours, da da da." And then that guy looked over at me, and he goes, "You can ask him. He was just here for a tour, but we don't have any." I was like, "Yeah, I didn't get one." And the guy looked at me and winked, and the two customers were like, "Oh, well, we can come back some other time." And he goes, "Well, we got a gift shop. We got this thing over here. You can walk around the house and take pictures." And they were like, "Oh, it's not, no problem. I think they said they were like 20 minutes away." He's like, "Okay, no biggie." So I went to the gift shop. Every time I go to one of these places, I look to drop $100 in the gift shop, minimum. I went to Woodrow Wilson's house in February 2021, and I just kept putting things up. She rang up the price, and it was $337. She rings it all up. She goes, "Now, here's the price. It's $337. And I just handed her my credit card, and I said, "Run it." And she goes, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Run it. I wouldn't have put it on the counter if I didn't want it." And she goes, "You don't know how much this means for us to be able to," because it's important for them. Look, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay more when you go to these places, but I know that. But I know what the money goes to, so I have no problem supporting it. And they were so happy when I left. The two people who were there, because they didn't open the tour for me because of COVID, so they give you this YouTube video, and you can do a walkthrough and everything like that. Woodrow Wilson in the basement, they've got it set up as a trench in World War I, and you open up, and as you start to walk down this threshold ramp, this sound kicks in, and I swear it's like you just entered a haunted house, but the lights are on, there's no flickering, and it is a real BBC audio that's playing, that was recorded on the war fields. There are people screaming. You can't really make out words too well, but you hear the sound of tanks, you hear the sound of bombs, you hear, like I said, screaming, and there's it's a very uncomfortable thing. I mean, I was actually scared, but only because I just kept feeling like something's going to jump out. Like I said, it was a haunted house, but there was, but I'm looking around, and the screaming. I mean, it was real screams, and I wasn't ready for that. And every time this scream happened, I just got this chill up my spine. And it was just like, oh my God, I'm listening to someone dying or in pain. And I ended up walking out. I would stay down in that basement. I actually recorded it on one of my things, which it's not up yet. But I'll get that up on my computer and maybe play that. And it probably won't have the same feel. But so I was leaving, and the recording stopped, and I was like, oh, thank God. And I turned, and my foot crossed that path again, and it kicked in. I think it was like a 15-minute recording, and it kicked in, and just you hear, and I was like, nope. And I just turned around, I walked out, and you walk up these stairs, and there's like guns of that air and gas masks and everything. I just got out, and I'm not even kidding you, I was close to just like this panic attack, like, oh my goodness. And I came up, and the two people that were there, they go, how was it? And I go, that was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life. Like it was the screaming. And the guy goes, yeah, it's the screaming that gets you. And I was like, it's because it's real. That wasn't fake. There's no fake bomb going off and somebody's leg probably blown off, and they weren't like, oh, I hope you got my lottery tickets. That was legit pain. I'm gonna get off of this picture because somehow I'm in a flashback to that. Let's see. Let's go here. So, anybody know what this is? Class? That is the home that was built and dedicated to Ulysses S. Grant after the Civil War. The town of Galena, Illinois. This is the town I was thinking of when I couldn't think of Dixon on the last one with the arch. So after the Civil War, that was the home that all the relatives came together. Grant was working at his father's tannery, if you know anything about that story. And that is the home that they built for him. It's free to go in, but they do ask for like a tip. And my sister and my brother-in-law went, and I think we threw down like a 20 or a couple 20s, and they were like, "Oh, much appreciated." The town itself, if you are ever in Illinois, you don't have to visit this home, but Galena, Illinois, it's so crazy beautiful. It's not flat like most of Illinois, so there's ski hills and all kinds of things around Galena, and the reason is it's there, and there are homes built on the landscape, on our little Illinois mountains, and that's because when the glacier went over, like 100 years ago, I don't know. So the glacier went over the Midwest, and it got to Galena, and Galena is very rocky. And it was so thick with rocks that the glacier actually split and went right around it. So you're looking at a throwback of time of what it looked like before the glacier went right over. It's actually pretty cool. But for people who don't know, Ulysses S. Grant, the S does not stand for anything. It was a typo when he went to West Point. His original name, his real name, is actually Hiram Ulysses Grant. When you were in school in those days, you didn't write your name, you wrote your initials. Hiram Ulysses Grant, H-U-G, Hug. Kids used to make fun of him like you wouldn't believe. So he dropped Hiram and used Ulysses Grant. When his dad put him at West Point, there was a typo. Too many S's. If you watch the Ulysses S. Grant History Channel documentary that they came out with in 2020, they came out with the George Washington one, by the way. And when that aired on a Sunday night. I had just arrived at my beach house vacation at Fort Morgan. And you better believe Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, I was on that couch watching it in real time. I did record it. I was watching it in real time, eating pizza. And every commercial, I'd run to the bathroom or run to go get a snack or run to... I watched it like you did in the old days. But, so... Chickamauga Battlefield says the S stands for Simpson. It does not. They're incorrect. So, the term Ulysses S. Grant, the U.S. Grant, he got dubbed that. In the video, it was General Sherman, William Tecumseh Sherman, who dubs it before he was general, who dubbed him that. And then U.S. Grant kind of became the name that they were pushing. And U.S. Grant stood for Unconditional Surrender Grant, which they kind of got a kick out of because that was the terms. What's the terms? Unconditional surrender. And he learned such a lesson fighting in Mexico as quartermaster. Grant actually changed the way wars and supply lines were fought. So as quartermaster, it used to be, and you see this with Russia. So Russian troops move up and then stop. Supply line catches up to them. Boom, boom, boom. Troops go, stop. Supply line catches up to them. Grant saw that as a hindrance. So what he did was, how long have I been talking? 38 minutes. My God. So Grant saw this as a hindrance. And he decided, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're all starting here. The troops and everything are going to be, let me do this one. Troops, we're going to be here, which is 300 miles away. And we're going to be there in 11 days. Your supply line, when we stop at this point, you better already be there. Now we're going to be going this way and then like that to get there. You just have to go like that. But you better be there when we're there, and you better be ready, because we're going to raid you, and then we're going to take off. So he made the supply line get to where they were going, not follow. And so it was and he used to say, don't get into danger. And they did have the ability to fight off, but he made sure that you're going to be where we need you. We're not going to wait around for you. That way it's like a continual march. And the supply line might meet you there. You take everything and they're gone, but another supply line knew they had to get to this juncture. And so it was just this constant thing. So, he kind of changed all of that. Sorry. I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 more. I'm going to call the video here. I apologize. This wasn't really story time. This was history lesson. This was just me showing some pictures of places that I've been to. I do have some pictures inside this home. They're kind of blurry. They're not great. It just gives me a reason to go back. there is a chair inside there. It's this pleathery chair that had wheels on it. That was Grant's favorite chair. It's in the living room here. That was his favorite chair, and he had that in the White House. So that was cool. I'm going to end this here, but I'm just going to go ahead and make another video, which hopefully won't run nearly as long as this one, because I only thought this would be like a 18-20 minute video, but apparently I was wrong. So I'm going to end this here. If you didn't like it, sorry. If it was kind of cool, great. It wanted to be a story time. It ended up being a history lesson. I apologize. Sorry. So have a good day. Have a good night. Oh yeah, like and subscribe too. You know, it was something different. All right. Thanks.